This is the same thing that we saw before that Margaret was explaining, that had the arrows and the circles, but now we're showing you the same exact thing and saying across the entire spectrum of someone's career, conversations are important, feedback is important, and also contacting your HR talent team is important, because process-wise, things can't happen unless you know, oh, I have a position that's open, we need to start sourcing people. Oh, we need to start selecting from those candidates. Now we're gonna onboard them. We do a company orientation in this room, or we come to you. For the flight attendant groups, for example, station agent groups, we go to you and do orientation in your classes. How do we, best engage and motivate people? Managing performance, you know now, but if you need to know how to access it, contact us. How do I ideally place someone on my team? How do I know what their strengths and weaknesses are and where they should be in the team? Should I groom them? Everyone always needs development. Or do they need to be exited, and when? When are the problems big enough and long-standing enough that I then need to off-board them? Or if somebody comes to me and they're voluntarily off-boarding, they're giving me my 2 weeks notice, and I'm not exactly sure what to do, contact us. Don't forget the basics. So I will apologize here for the basics and being a little crass. In every single part of someone's career here, if you're somebody's boss or manager, you're responsible for a lot of stuff. You interview people, you look at candidates, you make decisions about people, team members. So let's start at the beginning. If you have a position that's open and you're sourcing for candidates, please know the process, otherwise nothing can get done. And what that means is, if you have a position that's open, let us know about it so that it can be posted and so that we can prep you and coach you on what the next steps are if you are curious about that, especially if it's a new role. Once you have candidates that are knocking down your door, please be careful about who you select. Do not choose jerks, is the best way to put it. This actually is Google's HR tagline. HR at Google just says, please don't allow jerks to work here. What does that mean? Make sure they follow the golden rule, make sure they're a good fit. It's interesting, I'm originally from the East Coast, and what's interesting about the Midwest is the nice component also translates into the fact that ego doesn't work very well. Ego does not work well when you're choosing and selecting people to work at Sun Country Airlines or in general in the Midwest. And one of the most interesting business stories I heard, before I moved here, I heard the Twin Cities are both the most difficult place to recruit executives into and the most difficult place to recruit executives out of. Because once they're here, they don't want to leave. And I was really intrigued by the Twin Cities before coming here because of all the headquarters here. I think Target, 3M, General Mills, Best Buy, United Health Group, Cargill, I could go on and on and on and on. That's not normal for second-tier cities. It is just not normal. And what I realized, however, is that even though we have the CEOs and the Lake Minnetonkas and mansions and all that kind of stuff, what it comes right down to is one of the most interesting stories I heard was Rolls-Royce opened up a dealership on the 394 strip in Wayzata, and they couldn't survive. After a year, they closed and moved. Because even though we have so many headquarters, and even though we obviously have so many CEOs and executives, that ego doesn't work here. People don't feel comfortable driving around a Rolls Royce. So the reason I tell you that story is because that's all about fit. That's all about fit. And make sure you choose someone who fits. It's worth waiting and leaving the position open instead of choosing the wrong person. Onboarding, when you've chosen the person, remember that orientation is an event. Orientation is, 45 to 90 minutes, usually 90 minutes long, and that is a specific point in time where or we come to you, or the person comes in here and does orientation. But then they're given to you after onboarding, which is an event. Onboarding is a process, and you're responsible many times for that onboarding, especially if you have regulated training to accomplish. Many of you think of it as a 90-day time frame, but orientation is an event, onboarding is a process. I also want to let you know from a talent perspective that if you are in a department that has training, so this would apply for call center reservations agents, flight attendants, station agents. I want to let you know and make this very, very clear that once someone's in training, they're not yet an employee. You can flunk training. You can flunk training. And the reason I want to make that very clear is because if you are running a training class and you see someone, remember those trends and patterns I was talking about, and you see someone and they're coming late to training, what do you think is going to happen once they're actually an employee? Yeah, it ain't going to get better, folks. So if you are working with a department and your team members are in training, remember that the business definition of training means they are not yet an employee, and you can flunk training. Flight attendants know this well because they're reminded of that when they go through training. But I don't think the other areas of the airline are told this or reminded this. And as the manager or supervisor or lead, it gives you a lot of power to observe people and see how they're doing in training and make sure they are the best employee once they're done with training. If you see any negative signs, remember those things will not improve generally, if you see those trends and patterns. Okay, so then engage and motivate. How? By knowing who you are as a supervisor and a manager, that self-awareness, self-insight, understanding, you know, I have this style of management and it may or may not work for some people, and by knowing them. So you have a set of values and motivators that drive you, but so does that other person. And one of the biggest mistakes that managers and supervisors make is assuming everybody else is driven and motivated and values the same things that they do. So how you can best engage and motivate people is actually getting to know them, but first understanding who you are as a manager. Managing someone's performance. I just explained to you the new performance management process that we have. Please utilize it and utilize it to protect yourself. What I mean by that is if you get to a point where you have a team member and they're underperforming and you really think that they don't belong in your department, or very severely don't belong at Sun Country Airlines, if you haven't followed the process, there's not that much you can do about it. You have to wait until you've given them feedback, until you've put them on an EPIP, or unless it's a zero tolerance behavior. This is zero tolerance behavior, that's a completely different ball of wax. So follow the process. Placement utilization. So here's the goal with placement utilization. Ideally, someday we're going to have career tracking here. We have baby steps now, but this is the first baby step, which is what is someone's motivation and ambition level, their readiness? What are their key strengths? What are their development areas? Do they want to stay in the role that they're in now, or do they want something different or want something more? Just finding that out about someone is huge. But then where you place them or how you're grooming them, depending on where they want to go and what you and the business needs, that's where we want to find the win-win. And granted, there are going to be lots of people who say, you know what, I'm happy where I am and this is where I want to be, and that's really valuable and that's fabulous. But for those who want something different, whether it's a lateral move to a different department or moving up the ladder, we need to know that. And we need to find placement utilization ways that are win-win for that person, win for getting done what we need to get done, and also a win for the business. So we are starting now to career track, and that's one of the things I'm most excited about in my job. For the HR talent team, for example, one of the things I've been most excited about is trying to still figure out what everyone loves to do. You know, what's their passion? I mean, everyone has, their client is number one. The first thing you have to do is make sure to take care of your client group. But next, they have specializations, and the ideal is that that specialization is something they're passionate about, that they want to grow in, and that they can have more and more career tracking capabilities. And so that's one of the most exciting parts of my job, and we're going to get better at it. Groom, develop, or exit. So the goal is improvement. Always making sure someone's performance is improving and they're growing and developing. But also, please face facts. If you're someone who's been a little bit too soft or not wanting to address somebody who has had trends and patterns of poor performance, you know, please get to the point where you say, okay, this needs to be addressed. This needs to be taken care of. And then finally, offboarding. They may leave, or we need them to leave. So people know. This is the amazing thing. When you call someone on the carpet for their performance, or you bring up an issue, internally, 99% of the time, they're saying, I knew this was coming. They know they're not doing their best work. And ideally, people want to be doing their best work. People want to be, you know, getting accolades and doing a good job and having a positive impact. And people want to, everyone wants to be doing that. People's intentions, very few people have, you know, intentions that are not that when it comes to work and career. So you're doing them a service by addressing it, even if it'll be tough, even if it'll be hard.
What if it's their behavior though? I mean,
what if it's what?
Like their behavior of,
I agree.
Of influence, you know, their influence.
Their attitudinal? Yeah. So, you know, so that, if I could show you the EPIF, I can't put it up there again, but if it's attitudinal, it could have been that they should never have worked here in the first place, because they're gonna bring that same bad attitude no matter where they work, potentially. If there's someone who disrespects others, or if there's someone who, most people want to improve. Most people are open to feedback from their lead or their supervisor or their manager. If they're not, and they give you some tude, they probably have always been like that. And they probably were like that to their teachers as well. They probably were like that in their other workplaces as well, and they may need to be exited. It could also be a circumstance where this situation has gone on for so long that their attitude has really deteriorated because they're not doing their best work and the situation hasn't been changed or switched up. It needs to be changed and switched up. It needs to be addressed. The worst case scenario is that one person with a bad attitude and continued poor performance makes the entire department get pulled down. Because people who are doing well, people who are doing solidly or well, look at that person and say, why am I breaking my butt when that person gets to do that? That's the worst case scenario. You know, that's a scenario that you don't want to happen, because it's not just about that person anymore. It's infecting, you know, the entire team. Yeah. Because people do think that. The people who are here and are doing what they're supposed to be doing and and have the positive attitude, they are thinking that. Any other questions about this spectrum, or tools, resources, anything at all? These are the things that make being a manager and supervisor tough. It's not easy managing and supervising others. It's easy to get the work done in comparison. I once worked with an engineer at Medtronic, and he said, I could get so much work done if it weren't for the people. And I was like, you know, I gotta get you. I understand what you're saying there. It's not easy managing people.